So do you want to learn the secret to making insanely detailed 3D engraved coins like this, but you have no idea where to start? You're not alone. Even if you have a little experience using a laser like this, all of the settings can get super confusing, not to mention figuring out how to make the artwork to begin with. So in this video, I want to walk you step by step through the process that I've used to create coins like this, as well as a bunch of others. I'm gonna give you both paid and free options for creating your graphics, how you can customize those graphics per project inside of Lightburn, and help you dial in your settings, regardless of the type of fiber laser that you're using and the wattage that it has. So when I first started looking at fiber lasers, it was coins like these that I got super interested in doing, and I was really excited when I got my very first fiber laser. Then I found an image, put it on the coin, and then hit Engrave. And that engrave process was like the exact same one that I use when I'm putting an image on a piece of wood. You just do one entire pass and it varies the intensity of the laser to give you a nice grayscale image. Now, this is great, but if you flip it, you notice that it is flat. Literally, it's like the top of the piece of wood. This is not what I was looking at when I wanted a 3D engraved coin, meaning it was actually like carved into the wood. And before you jump into the comments and say like, this isn't true 3D, this is 2.5D. Sure, but you are carving into this metal, which gives it actual depth and not fake depth, which is what we did here. So the specific type of image unlocks this entire process. And that is a depth map versus just a straight gray image. And all a depth map, like, can't say depth map. And all that basically does, it breaks down your depth into a bunch of different layers, and then it applies darker and darker shades of gray to give you those depths. So looking at this image, the blackest area in here is gonna be as deep as we go, and then the lightest is going to be the highest. Versus with like a traditional image, your lightest area is what's gonna be closest to your light source, and your darkest is what's gonna be furthest away. So this isn't gonna give you the effect that we're looking for, but stay tuned, you can turn a normal image into a depth map, and I'll show you a couple ways to do it. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into our actual example where we're gonna do something highly illegal, and that is create our own money, but it's not illegal because it's totally fake because it's Pedro Pascal from The Mandalorian. Okay, so step one is creating our graphic, and for that we need a depth map of this guy right here. So there are a few different ways to do it. We're gonna start off with the easiest, but it also might be the paid version of this. So there's actually a few places that I go to when I'm looking specifically for depth maps. And one of them is just like straight up Etsy. If you just like look for laser depth map, you're gonna find a ton. And what you're really looking for is this right here. This is a good example from Coincraft Studios. So you can see this is our actual depth map. So like the headband is gonna be towards the top, the snake is gonna be a little bit further back, and then the very back is gonna be even further back. But what you could do is like to search for what you're looking for. In my case, I'm gonna do Star Wars depth map coin maybe. And I've already done this, so I actually know we're not gonna find exactly what we're looking for. But depending on your situation, you might find something that just works right off the bat. And I've actually bought stuff from Coincraft Studios, which we just talked about, as well as Laser Files King, I think. And then sometimes they'll show you just like the normal gray image like we have right here. So just be careful with that and make sure you're actually getting the depth map. Or again, you're gonna run into the situation that I did the very first time that I made this. Okay, so I did look for the Mandalorian depth map, and this was the only one that I could find, and this is the one that you've seen some footage from, but I just need the helmet itself. So like you could go into some photo editing and like cut that out, and that would probably work. But I wanted to show you a different process to go after this. That is actually to start with a 3D model, because there is a free tool that can convert a 3D model into a depth map. So if you go to printables.com, this is Prusa's site. They have a lot of really good resources. And yeah, there we go. We are gonna have probably a ton of different helmets that we can pick from. So I am going to download this one. You can see actually here is our helmet. So for the coin, we're just gonna need like an angle like that. So that looks good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and download this. Now another option to find models is Maker World, which is Bamboo Labs version of printables. So same thing, coming over to Mandalorian helmet. And again, Your mileage will vary depending on the type of stuff that you're wanting to make. But you can see we have a few different versions. In general, like the nerdier that you're going, more than likely you're gonna find a 3D model for it. But if you're just looking for general like Eagle over America depth map, Etsy is probably going to be your best bet with like logos and emblems and all that kind of stuff as well. And speaking of logos and emblems, you're gonna have to be careful with those, especially if you're selling it. That's something you're gonna need a license for. And if you find a file for this on Etsy, more than likely they don't have a license for it. So just keep that in mind. And that's why they're not calling this like Disney's Guardians of the Galaxy rocket, because Disney will very quickly send you a cease and desist and try to take all of your money. Okay, so we actually do have the 3D model helmet. Let me show you the next tool, which is literally called STL, which is the file format to PNG converter. And this is specific for depth maps or height maps. Right here, this is like open source, I think on GitHub. There'll be links down below to all of these resources. But I'm just gonna go ahead and choose side because that's the profile that I wanna do. I'm gonna choose my file. I'm going to pull in my STL and then it's going to convert that into an actual depth map, which you can see it is doing right now. And a lot of times when you download those models, they're gonna give it to you in an OBJ format, not an STL. And I'll include a free converter down below that allows you to convert that to an STL as well. So you can see there is our side image. And actually, I think I want to do the front version of it. So I just got to refresh this. Yeah, so there is our image. So I can just right click and save, and then I have my depth map of my PNG. Now, before we get into how we can customize that image to create our coin, I want to show you one of the process where you can just take an existing photograph and turn that into a depth map. There's actually been a lot of tools fairly recently that have come out that allow you to do this. And going back to our example, imagine instead of the Mandalorian's helmet, you actually have the Mandalorian's head. In this case, Pedro Pascal. So to do this, I just went to Google and found a side profile image, and then I removed the background. And I'll include a link to my overall like photo engraving tips to where I talk more about how you can like adjust the contrast, remove the background to get a really clean image, which is what we've got here. Now we want to take that image and turn it into our depth map. And to do that, there are a couple different tools that you can use that are going to have limited free options. One is Depth R, and if you've seen Image R with laser stuff in general, I think it's the same thing, just its own standalone site, but it's just gonna let me upload my image and then generate my depth map. And then it gives you a few things like that background removal, as well as you can do like high detail, and it's gonna give us our best version of a depth map right here that then we can take into Lightburn. And I find this works okay, but you can already kind of see we're losing a lot of detail. There's actually a lot of contrast in there that we're losing. And so for some situations, this actually works great, but there's actually a newer tool that I've been using a lot more, and that is SculptOK. And you can see we've got our AI depth map generator right here. I'm gonna bring in my image. I'm not gonna do any background removal because I've already done that. I don't need any HD restoration, and I'm gonna do a side profile of Pedro Pascal because these tools are using AI models to convert your picture into a depth map. And then I would just hit draw, and then you'll get 4 different versions that kind of vary on the level of detail. And I have found that usually this one or this one works about the best. And this is actually going to be the one that we're going to wind up using. And something that is nice about this, you don't have to use a credit, which you get a few free of until you actually download the image. And that is what's going to remove their watermark. You can also do this like 3D preview, which I found is pretty handy because more or less this is what we are doing on our coin. So you can see how those details are going to show up. But really the only drawback with this that I'm finding is since it's using AI, it's interpreting a lot of the information in your image. And for whatever reason, I'm getting this like white chunk on the edge, which if I go back to the 3D, you can see it showing up right here. Again, white will be at the top and black will be at the bottom. So you still might need to clean up or like cut this out again. So in my case, I just took this inside of Photoshop. I made it a little bit smaller to give me a big black background so that we can have a good mask here in our next step, which finally brings us to our next step, step number 2, and that is adding custom text to our image. And you can do this all inside of Lightburn. So I've got Lightburn set up and I am just going to drag and drop in my image. And it is way bigger than the workbed on this. I'm using the Gwick G2 Pro 50 watt, and I think it's got like a 110 by 110 millimeter workbed. So like relatively small. So one thing I'm gonna do is just scale this down to start. And the first thing I'm gonna do is add our circle shape to this image. So I'm gonna come over here to a circle. I'm gonna hold Shift, and when you do that, see if I don't have Shift right now, it's gonna go all wibbly wobbly, but if you hold Shift, it's going to make it symmetrical, and you're gonna be good to go. And then up here at the top, and I know this coin has a max dimension of 40 millimeters that I measured earlier. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this onto a tool layer. And the importance of our tool layers are going to show up a lot more here in a minute. But I'm gonna click T1 here at the very bottom. That's gonna drop it onto a tool layer, and you can see it's changed to tool. And this frame option is going to be a big thing that we're going to use to line everything up in a second. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to move this to the center. So I've got it selected, and then I'm going to hit this crosshair at the top. Move page to center. And again, these are everything I have turned on for my windows, so yours might look a little bit different. So that's under the arrange panel. I'll go ahead and turn on long since we're doing a bunch of stuff. To make this, we're actually doing text around the edges. So the image is actually masked inside of that. And I forget how many millimeters that I did, but we're gonna do an offset to create that. So all you have to do for an offset is select this, come over here to the big O, which is also the offset. I'm gonna hit it, and then I wanna go inwards. Right now we're at 12 millimeters. We don't need that much. Let's go something more like 3. Now we're also going to use that shape to mask our image. So I am just gonna like copy and paste this because I'm gonna use this later. And then I'm gonna drop this on a different tool layer. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. This is just the way I do it, so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Because this inner guy right here, that is gonna be the form for our text. So inside of Lightburn, you can actually do text around a shape, and that's gonna be the shape that we're going to use. So I'm gonna come over here, do text, and this is way too big. I'm gonna do like 2.5 on my height up here at the top. Goes way further down, and this is gonna be in Rogu, we trust. Then this is the way, 15 ABY, which is just a nerdy date for probably when this is happening. And I'm gonna put this on a different layer. I'm actually gonna put it on 1, and this is gonna be set to fill, and this is gonna be our text layer. So I'm just gonna make sure it's a label of text, which it is. And I think when it brought in the image, it put it on 1 as well. So I'm gonna make sure this is on 0. And they can be on any layers that they want. So what we are going to do is we're going to put our text onto our circle. And something that I just learned, if you didn't know, any text that you have, I'm gonna kind of move it over here, hopefully make it easier to see. You can see there's like a little blue dot right here. If you hit that, and as I zoom out, I'm actually putting it around a circle itself, and I can kind of define whatever the radius is on that. So that's one way that you could do this if you wanted, but I'm gonna go the other way. So I'm gonna select it, I'm gonna hit the center circle, then I'm going to right click, and then I'm gonna do apply path to text. And now we've got our text around the path. Now I don't know an easy way to like spread everything out evenly. I just kind of manually do this. If you guys do know that, let me know down in the comments. I would love to update this in the future. But to get to that, basically what we can mess with is our height as well as our H space, which is like the distance between the letters. So we're gonna bump this up. Oh, and also I want this to be aligned to the bottom. So you can see right now, our align controls are over here on the right. So these are aligned, especially on the Y, to the middle. So that is why the line is cutting it through the middle. I want to do it actually through the top. Yep. And then I'm going to kind of play around with the settings here a little bit to get everything spaced out. So I can do a bigger gap with these guys. Finally, what we need to do is put Pedro's face inside of this image. So to do that is we are going to use a mask. So any vector shape that you have inside of Lightburn, you can turn into a mask. In this case, this is the tool layer that we used earlier. And actually, I'm gonna have to make this a little bit smaller because I forgot how I was gonna center the text. But let's go ahead and do this first. Now, you may not be able to see the tool layer. I'm just trying to pull it over. And that is because whatever's at the bottom actually is on the top. Which I don't really know why Lightburn does it that way. But if I do that, now we've got our blue at the top. And I'm going to just like reposition this so that we are good to go. I'm holding Command, and that allows you to size it from the middle versus if I didn't, it would do it like that. So that is pretty easy. And then also when we apply our mask, we can adjust kind of how it's set up afterwards too. So you don't have to get it exactly. Then I'm going to select both. I'm sliding from the right side, hitting right click, then apply mask to image. And we are good to go. And actually, I just moved Pedro's face and not the entire thing. So you can definitely adjust it still got control of everything. And this is also why we made the image a little bit smaller and added an extra black around it, because depending on how small you want to go, you definitely need the back in that background in your actual image to give you enough room to mask it. So now I'm just going to pull this over. So we're going to say something kind of like that, and we are going to be set. And then just to make sure everything is aligned to the very center, I'm going to select everything, come up to this little target right there. It's going to align both vertical and horizontal. And then you can also align it to the very center of your machine as well. And that is what this crosshairs is over at the far right. In my case, and when I do that, it didn't really move it much, but imagine if it was over there, go to the very center, gonna be good to go. And that all has to do with the positioning of your material on your machine, which is what we're gonna talk about next. Now, if you wanna go even deeper with lasers and all the crazy things you can do specifically inside of Lightburn, I encourage you guys to check out my course down below. I'm actually gonna be fully updating this course over the next few weeks and adding a lot more practical information to it outside of just Lightburn. But if you do wanna pick it up now, you'll get all the future updates at the current price. All right, back to the tutorial. All right, in this step, we're talking about the machine, specifically the machine settings. And actually my computer crashed on me and I had to recreate this. So it might look a little bit different, but it's more or less the same. But one thing I have gone ahead and done is I've added in my power and speed and laser frequency setting. A few tips I would give you with that. First is to use a material library. And actually this is one that I got from Laser Everything. Those guys are a great laser channel over on YouTube with tons of awesome resources, especially for fiber. So if you want to go even deeper than what I'm doing, I would direct you towards those guys. But they have a couple good library files right here that they break down by power that you can load directly into Lightburn. And you just do it like right there. So in the case of the image layer, I can come down here to the raster, photo details, and then I can assign it, and they're going to give me a good starting point. But specifically for this machine at 50 watts, I haven't really dialed it in, but these are some ballpark ones that I'm using. So we got 1700 millimeters per second at a max power of 90, because again, we aren't just marking on this metal, we are removing the metal. So the power is gonna be pretty high. And then I'm using a frequency of 46. This isn't a MOPA, which is gonna have a greater frequency, and it would also give you a pulse width setting that's gonna show up right here. And the next thing you wanna make sure you are taking account of is the DPI. Around 1,000 seems to be a pretty good sweet spot with these fiber machines. And then here is the key thing that you have to have selected or this will not work, and that is our image mode. So if we were just doing like a normal image engrave, I probably would have selected Jarvis. In this case, we are doing 3D sliced because Lightburn itself will actually go and look at the shades of gray and then assign them to different layers. With that selected, you get the ability to actually select the number of layers you want to use. Now, I've seen a lot of people put this at 256 because that's like the 256 shades of gray that you can get with like an image or something like that. But I'm pretty sure you can kind of set this to whatever. It's just gonna like figure out what to do. So I actually don't do mine at 256. I do mine at around 100. And for a coin at these settings, that takes about 30 minutes versus an hour and a half. Again, this will be something really good to test to see if that additional depth is worth the time for you. But for this, we're just doing 100 and then everything else is going to be good to go. Now you might open this up and you see that I've got cleanup right here. And that is because this is selected. So enable a cleanup pass. And a cleanup pass is literally that. It's just cleaning up all the nasty stuff that you don't want in your engraving. And by doing it inside the layer itself, so by selecting this, you get the option, if I switch over to cleanup, to be able to do a pass after a certain number of layers versus just doing it once at the very end. So this might save you on post-processing. Again, this is something to play around with. But in my case, I'm gonna run this pretty fast at 2800 millimeters per second, a pretty low power at 35, and then a higher frequency. I'm actually gonna bump this up to 80 because I'm not really trying to engrave the brass itself. I'm just trying to clear off the stuff that's built up in the process. And then for me, I did it after like 10 passes and then hit Okay, and then the final thing that we need to make sure we have set up is our text layer. So that's going to be separate. So I could again come to my library, I could do our black deep, and I could hit assign, or for me, I just went ahead and defined it at 120, so a lot slower. I did a max power of 54, and I'm actually gonna bump up my number of passes to like 2 or 3, because I do want this going deeper into my material, and I'm gonna have crosshatch selected. So everything right there looks good to go. Everything else can stay stock. And then one final setting that you might want to do, and this is kind of like the old way to do a cleanup, is I'm going to create another circle. Again, this is going to be the size of our coin. I think we set, it looks like it's 40 now. Make sure everything is centered. And then I'm going to put this on layer 3. And then I want to make sure I've got everything centered up. Everything looks good. And because this was a project I already had set up, it knew I wanted to make this my cleanup layer, which is just gonna be the exact same thing, more or less, that our cleanup was inside of the image itself. It's just gonna apply it to the entire coin. So I'm doing this to also catch the letters. Helps you with your post-processing process. So 3000 speed, 20% power. So really not doing much at 80 frequency. And I'm gonna do like 4 passes and actually wanna change the angle. So I'm gonna hit 45. So it like rotates 45 degrees each time it does one of those passes. And with that, we are pretty much good to go. So let me show you how you can really easily position this now that we have our file set up. So I'm just gonna send these layer by layer, and you can adjust what you're gonna actually output when I hit start right over here. So I definitely want to send my cleanup. I'm also not gonna send my text layer. But again, because we have that cleanup sublayer that is set up, we are gonna do a cleanup pass every 10. Now, one thing on my tool layers that I wanna make sure I have turned on is frame, and that is gonna be for T1. So if you remember, T1 is our overall 40 millimeter coin. I'm gonna come up here and hit start. And default with Lightburn, it's gonna do this live framing before you can actually start, which is good because we just wanna do tool layers only. And you can see when I do that, I'm just getting that circle that was our tool layer. So I can use the circle, and then once everything looks good, I'm gonna hit start, and we're gonna be good to go. Now the text layer is gonna be the exact same process as well as our final cleanup layer, which we are gonna do a few passes of. And when we're finally done, we get a nice coin like this. Now at this point, we could be completely done, but you definitely can make this look nicer with some post-processing process. We are going to basically fake a patina. So there are some polishing liquids that you can apply to this. Now I don't actually have that polishing compound here, but we're gonna fake it for this video and do something that a lot of prop makers do, and that is give us a good dirt wash across the top. And that's gonna be using like black acrylic paint. So all I'm doing is basically getting the black paint into the nooks and crannies, and then I'm gonna polish off the top to give me a really good contrast on my final coin. Now it's impossible to make these coins unless you have a fiber laser, and there are a ton of different fiber lasers that are out there. I made a full video breaking down how to pick the right one for you, and we're gonna jump into that right now. Until next time, go make or break something in your shop. See you guys. So just like Inception, let's find out, are we in a dream? Is this gonna stop?